Now we're going to talk a little bit about vertical integration. So with vertical integration, you've got to look at a firm's ownership of different activities that are complementary to the value chain. And this can either be backward or forward looking. Backward looking vertical integration relates to suppliers' activities, and forward looking integration looks at customers' activities. And we can look, we can define this as full or partial integration. So the degree of vertical integration is generally seen to be calculated by the firm's value added over sales revenue. So with regards to transaction costs, and this goes back to transaction cost economics, we have to ask ourselves, which activities do we integrate? This is transaction cost economics. Originally comes from Oliver Williamson. We look at this two ways, between markets and hierarchy, or markets and organizations. So with regards to transaction costs, the whole principle or the whole question of transaction cost economics, I've talked about this in a couple of videos, is should we produce a certain good or service in-house or should we procure it within the marketplace? And part of it pertains to maybe a difference in labor or material supplies, between an in-house strategic business unit doing a good or service versus procuring it in the market. But then there's also the search costs that are very, very important. And there's administrative costs. So on part of the transaction costs, you have to assess information. Is this a good supplier or not? You have to negotiate and build a contract. You got to pay lawyers, and that takes time. You have to monitor a contract. Again, lawyers and time. And then you have to enforce arbitration or litigation. Again, lawyers and time. And then there's the organizational piece of it, which includes things like administrative cost. So how much does it cost to organize activities within a firm versus how much does it cost to coordinate activities within a firm? So think of it like this. The total cost of any individual component in the value chain would, of course, be equal to the material plus labor plus transportation plus search costs to do it in the market plus administrative costs. So within the firm. And we can actually put this under satisficing behavior. Okay? So satisficing behavior means that strategic business units within a firm only do enough not to get fired. Doesn't mean that it means that they don't have any real competition because they've only got one customer and there's no competition. So they don't perform as well as they would in the market itself. So this is what gets kind of interesting. You know that no matter what you do, you're going to have to pay material costs and labor costs. Now in the open market, the materials and labor might be more or less expensive, hard to say. We also don't know much about the transportation costs. You would think if it's within the same firm, it'd at least be in the same city, but it might not be. Right? So transportation costs is kind of a question mark. Now, if you procure it in the open market, that's where you have your search costs. Again, that's the assessing information, negotiating, building the contract, monitoring the contract, enforcing arbitration or litigation, all that stuff. But then the administration piece, the satisficing behavior, is only relevant if you're doing something within the firm. Okay? Those coordination activities won't be as relevant when you contract the service in the market because you just pay for the product itself. You don't necessarily have to pay for the coordination. So you would probably engage in vertical integration when these search costs are significant. Okay? In fact, when they are more, the search costs are more than the administrative costs when you have considered the material, labor, and transportation costs. So that would tell you whether you should vertically integrate or not. So great. We're going to talk about, in our next video, diversification. Looking forward to seeing you then.